Ibrahim Traoré trusted few men in his inner circle, but Marcel Diallo was different. From the day he had joined Traoré's revolutionary movement in Burkina Faso, Marcel had proven himself loyal, smart and resourceful. Now, as Traoré sat in his modest office in the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, he watched Marcel review security reports with careful attention. "What do you think, my brother?" Traoré asked, leaning forward. The ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, barely moving the hot air. Marcel looked up with serious eyes. "The situation at the border is getting worse. The terrorist groups are better armed than before. Someone is supplying them." Traoré nodded grimly. Since taking power, he had made it his mission to push foreign influence out of Burkina Faso, especially the French, who had controlled their country for too long from the shadows. "We need to strengthen our northern checkpoints," Marcel suggested. "I can oversee it personally." "Yes, do that," Traoré agreed. "There is no one I trust more than you, Marcel." Marcel nodded, his face revealing nothing as he gathered the papers. "I'll leave tomorrow morning." What Traoré didn't see was how Marcel's hand trembled slightly as he organized the documents. Nor did he notice Marcel check his phone quickly, sending a brief message to a contact saved only as Antoine. The message was simple: "Border inspection tomorrow. Will have full access to security protocols." In his apartment that night, Marcel sat alone in the dark, the blue light of his encrypted satellite phone illuminating his face. The voice on the other end spoke quietly in French. "You've done well gaining his trust," the man said. "Paris is pleased. The information you've provided has been invaluable." "He calls me brother now," Marcel replied flatly. "Excellent. Remember why you're doing this." Traoré's anti-French policies would destroy decades of stability in the region. "Your work prevents chaos." Marcel ended the call and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights of Ouagadougou. 3 years of building trust, becoming Traoré's right-hand man, his confidant, his brother. 3 years of betrayal. When he had first been recruited by French intelligence, it had seemed clear: infiltrate the revolutionary movement and ensure French interests were protected. Marcel had Burkinabe parents, but was raised in France. He understood both worlds. The perfect spy. But watching Traoré work tirelessly for his people had complicated things. The president wasn't perfect, but his passion for true independence was genuine. Marcel had begun to wonder if he was on the wrong side of history. His phone buzzed with a message from Traoré. "Safe travels tomorrow, my brother. Our country is safer with men like you protecting it." Marcel deleted the message and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would inspect the border checkpoints. Tomorrow he would feed more information back to Paris. Tomorrow he would continue his betrayal. As dawn broke over Ouagadougou, Marcel loaded his bag into the military jeep. Traoré came to see him off, embracing him tightly. "Return quickly, my brother," Traoré said. "We have much work to do." "I will," Marcel promised, the weight of his deception sitting heavy on his chest. As the jeep pulled away, Marcel's satellite phone vibrated in his pocket. New instructions from Paris. More demands, more betrayal. The journey north took 8 hours over rough roads. Marcel sat in silence, watching the landscape change from city to dry savanna. The 2 soldiers traveling with him respected his quiet, assuming he was focused on the important border mission. In truth, Marcel's mind was split in 2. Part of him was indeed planning the border inspection, thinking about how to strengthen security against the terrorist groups. Another part was identifying weaknesses he could report back to his French handlers. The border region was tense. Villages emptied as people fled the violence. At the first checkpoint, Captain Ouago saluted sharply. "We're honored by your visit, sir. President Traoré sends his best man." Marcel nodded. "Show me everything. Hold nothing back." For hours Marcel inspected the defenses, noted patrol schedules, and examined weapons inventories. He was thorough, asking smart questions that impressed the soldiers. They didn't realize he was memorizing their weaknesses too. That night, in his temporary quarters, Marcel used his satellite phone to send encrypted data to Paris. patrol routes, guard rotations, weapon stockpiles. All the information that could undermine Burkina Faso's security. The northern sector is particularly vulnerable, he reported quietly. They have only 30 men covering 80 kilometers. Excellent work, came the reply. We have new instructions. We need access to Traoré's upcoming meeting with the Russian delegation. Marcel's stomach tightened. That meeting is top secret. Security will be extreme. That's why we need you. This is critical. France cannot allow Russian influence to replace ours in the region. After ending the call, Marcel stepped outside into the cool night air. Stars filled the vast sky above the desert. A soldier on guard duty nodded respectfully as Marcel passed. "Beautiful night, sir," the young man said. "Yes," Marcel agreed, stopping beside him. "How long have you served?" 2 years, sir. I joined after President Traoré took power. I believe in what he's doing, making our country truly independent." Marcel studied the young soldier's earnest face. "And do you think we will succeed? If men like you and the president lead us?" "Yes, I do." The soldier smiled proudly. "My village was controlled by terrorists before. Now my family sleeps safely. That's what independence means to us." Marcel nodded and continued walking, the weight of his betrayal growing heavier. These were real people, with real lives affected by his actions. Not just chess pieces in a geopolitical game played from Paris. The next morning, Marcel continued his inspection at the second checkpoint. Here the situation was worse. The soldiers were under-equipped, their vehicles breaking down, ammunition in short supply. "We've requested reinforcements multiple times," the commander explained with frustration. "But resources are limited. I'll speak directly to the president," Marcel promised. "This will be addressed." And he meant it. He would tell Traoré about these problems. But tonight, he would also tell his French handlers about these vulnerabilities. As Marcel completed his inspection, a guard approached with a satellite phone. "Urgent call from the capital, sir." It was Traoré himself. "Marcel, you need to return immediately. We've uncovered something disturbing. I need you here." "What's happened?" Marcel asked, his heart suddenly racing. "Not over the phone. Just come back. I need someone I can trust completely." As Marcel ended the call, cold fear washed over him. Had he been discovered? Was this a trap? Or was there some other crisis requiring his attention? Either way, he had to return to Ouagadougou immediately. To face Traoré, the man who called him brother, the man he betrayed every day. The drive back was tense, every bump in the road matching Marcel's racing heartbeat. If his cover was blown, he wouldn't make it out of the presidential palace alive. If there was a genuine crisis, he would be forced deeper into his web of lies. As the capital city appeared on the horizon, Marcel sent one final message to his French handlers. "Called back urgently. May be compromised. Stand by for emergency extraction." Marcel arrived at the presidential palace as the sun was setting. Guards waved him through with respectful nods. No signs they suspected anything. Still, Marcel's training kept him alert, watching for any trap. Traoré was waiting in his office, pacing with visible agitation. When Marcel entered, the president looked up with relief. "Thank God you're back," Traoré said, embracing him briefly. "We have an information leak." Marcel's face remained calm while his heart hammered. "What kind of leak?" "Someone gave the terrorists our patrol schedules in the eastern region. They ambushed our men yesterday. 12 soldiers dead." Traoré slammed his fist on the desk. 12 families destroyed because someone is feeding information to our enemies. Marcel felt sick. He had passed information about the eastern patrols just last month, believing it would only be used for intelligence purposes. Not for this. Never for this. "Do we have any leads?" Marcel asked carefully. "Nothing concrete," Traoré said, studying some papers.
but I'm certain the French are involved. They can't accept that we've broken free from their control." Marcel nodded, struggling to maintain his composure. "What do you need from me?" "I want you to lead the investigation," Traoré said, looking directly into Marcel's eyes. "Find the traitor. You're the only one I trust completely." The irony was almost too much to bear. The traitor asked to find himself. "I'll start immediately," Marcel promised, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. Later that night, Marcel made contact with his handlers from his apartment. "This is an unexpected development," the French controller said. "But it could work to our advantage. Leading the investigation puts you in the perfect position to control the narrative." 12 soldiers died, Marcel said sharply. "That wasn't what I signed up for." "Regrettable but unavoidable in this line of work," came the cold reply. "Your position is too valuable to compromise over sentiment. Continue the mission." After the call, Marcel sat in darkness, his mind in turmoil. For the first time, he began to seriously question his mission. He had believed he was helping maintain stability, preventing chaos. Instead, he had blood on his hands. The next morning, Marcel began his investigation, setting up in a secure office, with all the information about the ambush. He interviewed officers, reviewed reports, and examined communication logs, all while ensuring the investigation would never lead back to him. As days passed, Marcel directed suspicion toward a low-level communications officer, who had recently been disciplined for drunkenness. The man had access to patrol schedules, but no real connection to French intelligence. A convenient scapegoat. Marcel was preparing his report, when Amadou Sankara, the head of military intelligence, and an old friend of Traoré's, requested a meeting. "Your investigation is very thorough," Sankara said, reviewing Marcel's notes. "Almost too thorough." "What do you mean?" Marcel asked, keeping his voice casual. "You've examined everyone's movements, except your own," Sankara observed. "And you were in the eastern region just before the attack." Marcel held Sankara's gaze steadily. "I was there on the president's direct orders, as you well know." "Yes," Sankara nodded slowly. "The president trusts you completely. I, however, have learned to trust no one completely." The threat was subtle but clear. Sankara suspected something. Or was he fishing, hoping Marcel would reveal himself through nervous behavior? "If you have accusations to make them formally," Marcel said calmly. "Otherwise, I have an investigation to complete." Sankara smiled thinly. "No accusations, just observations." "Good day, Diallo." As Sankara left, Marcel felt the noose tightening. His position was becoming dangerous. He needed to finish this mission soon, or risk exposure. That evening, Traoré invited Marcel to dinner at his private residence, a rare honor showing the president's trust. As they ate, Traoré seemed reflective. "Do you know why I trust you so completely, Marcel?" he asked. "I've always served loyally," Marcel answered carefully. "Yes, but it's more than that," Traoré said. "Everyone wants something from me now, that I have power. But you've never asked for wealth or position. You seem to want only what I want, a free Burkina Faso." Marcel felt the knife of guilt twist deeper. "We all serve in our own way. Tomorrow I'm announcing something important," Traoré continued. "We've secured a major mining deal with China that will finally break French economic control over our resources. It's the beginning of true independence." Marcel nodded, his mind racing. This was exactly the kind of development his handlers would want to know about, and potentially sabotage. "To true independence," Marcel said, raising his glass while hating himself for the betrayal already forming in his mind. Dawn found Marcel staring at his satellite phone, hesitating. The information about the Chinese mining deal was exactly what his French handlers wanted. proof that Traoré was shifting alliances away from Western powers. This intelligence could earn Marcel praise, maybe even completion of his mission and extraction home. But 12 soldiers were dead because of information he'd passed. 12 families destroyed. If he shared this new intelligence, what would the consequences be? More death, economic sabotage that would hurt ordinary citizens. Finally he made his decision. He turned on the phone and connected to the secure channel. "I have critical information," he said when his handlers answered. "Traoré is announcing a major mining deal with China tomorrow. Details to follow." "Excellent work," the French voice replied. "This validates our concerns about Chinese expansion in our former territories. We need complete details of the agreement." Marcel took a deep breath. "Before I provide more, I need assurances. The Eastern Patrol information I gave you, it wasn't supposed to lead to an ambush. We don't control what happens to all intelligence once it enters the pipeline," the handler said dismissively. "Focus on your mission. Paris is pleased with your work." The non-answer told Marcel everything. They didn't care about Burkina lives lost. Perhaps they had even passed the patrol information to the terrorist groups directly, creating chaos to undermine Traoré's government. At the presidential palace that morning, Marcel attended the pre-announcement briefing. The mining deal was even bigger than Traoré had indicated, a complete restructuring of how Burkina Faso's gold and uranium would be extracted and sold, bypassing French companies entirely. "This will transform our economy," Traoré said excitedly. "For decades, our resources made others rich while our people remained poor. That ends now." Marcel studied the faces around the table. Most showed enthusiasm, but a few officials, those with long-standing ties to French businesses, looked uncomfortable. Potential allies for his mission, or just self-interested bureaucrats worried about their corrupt income streams. After the meeting, Sankara approached Marcel again. "The president has assigned me to security for tomorrow's announcement. You'll be coordinating with my team." Marcel nodded professionally, though alarm bells rang in his head. Was Sankara positioning himself to watch Marcel more closely? "Of course. I'll have my security assessment ready within the hour." Throughout the day, Marcel played his role perfectly. The dedicated security chief, the loyal advisor, the trusted brother. But in brief, hidden moments, he photographed documents about the Chinese deal using a tiny camera disguised as a pen. That evening, he transmitted the intelligence during his daily run through a park that had spotty security camera coverage. The information would reach Paris within minutes. The response came faster than expected. His handler requested an urgent meeting, not over the secure line but in person. A French diplomatic car would pick him up at midnight, near the old cathedral. Marcel knew immediate in-person meetings were extremely unusual and dangerous. It could be a simple extraction, pulling him out now that he had provided such valuable intelligence. Or it could be something else entirely. Either way, this might be his last night in Burkina Faso. Marcel looked around his apartment, at the life he had built over 3 years. Despite the constant deception, parts of it had become real. He had friends here. He had purpose. At 11:45 p.m., Marcel slipped out of his apartment building through a service exit, avoiding the security guards who would normally report his movements to the presidential security team. The streets were mostly empty, as he made his way toward the cathedral. A black diplomatic vehicle with tinted windows was already waiting. As Marcel approached, the back door opened. Inside sat not his regular handler, but a senior French intelligence officer he had met only once before at his initial briefing in Paris. "Get in quickly," the man said in French. "The situation has accelerated." Once inside, Marcel realized they weren't alone. A third man sat silently in the corner, watching him carefully. The mining deal changes everything, the senior officer explained as the car pulled away. Paris has decided we need more direct intervention. What kind of intervention? Marcel asked cautiously. Traoré must not sign that agreement tomorrow. It undermines decades of French economic policy in the region. Marcel felt a chill. What exactly are you planning? The officer handed Marcel a small case. Inside was a sophisticated listening device. Plant this in the presidential office tonight. We need to hear his private conversations. That's all, Marcel asked, not believing it for a second. For now, the officer replied, his eyes cold. Further instructions will follow. As the car circled back toward the cathedral, Marcel understood they were asking him to cross a new line. No longer just intelligence gathering, but active sabotage. Perhaps worse. He had a choice to make tonight. Continue serving his French masters, or finally listen to his conscience. The car stopped. We'll expect confirmation when the device is planted, the officer said. Do not disappoint Paris. Marcel nodded and stepped out, the listening device heavy in his pocket. As he walked back toward the presidential palace, where his security clearance would allow him late-night access, he felt a presence behind him. Turning quickly, he caught a glimpse of a figure ducking into a door. He was being followed, but by whom? French operatives ensuring he completed his task, or Sankara's men, finally closing in on the traitor. Marcel entered the presidential palace through a side entrance, nodding to the night guards who were accustomed to his unusual hours. His heart pounded as he made his way toward Traoré's office, the listening device concealed in his jacket. The hallways were quiet, with only minimal security at this hour. Marcel had planned countless operations within these walls. He knew every blind spot in the security system. Getting into Traoré's office undetected would be simple. As he rounded the corner to the presidential wing, Marcel froze. Light spilled from under Traoré's office door. The president was still working, even at this late hour. Marcel hesitated, then straightened his jacket and knocked on the door. He would need to improvise. Enter, came Traoré's tired voice. Marcel opened the door to find the president hunched over documents, eyes red from fatigue. Traoré looked up in surprise. Marcel, what brings you here so late? Final security checks for tomorrow's announcement, Marcel said smoothly. I couldn't sleep knowing there might be vulnerabilities. Traoré smiled. Always thorough. That's why I trust you. Those words hit Marcel like physical blows. 3 years of lies. 3 years of betrayal. And still this man trusted him completely. Is everything all right? Traoré asked, noticing Marcel's discomfort. Marcel made a decision in that moment that would change everything. No, Mr. President, everything is not all. Marcel closed the door and lowered his voice. We need to talk, but not here. Confusion crossed Traoré's face. What's going on? Your office may be compromised, Marcel said, the irony of his words not lost on him. We should speak somewhere else. Traoré studied Marcel's face, then nodded slowly. The garden. No electronic surveillance there. They walked in silence through the palace and out into the private presidential garden. Ancient baobab trees stood like sentinels in the moonlight. Once they were far from any buildings, Traoré stopped. Now tell me what this is about. Marcel took a deep breath. The point of no return. I've been working for French intelligence since before you took power, he said, the words rushing out, now that the dam had broken. I was sent to infiltrate your movement, to become close to you, to gather intelligence, and undermine your efforts to break from French influence. Traoré's face hardened into a mask of shock and betrayal. His hand moved instinctively toward his waist, where Marcel knew he carried a pistol. Traoré couldn't even form words, his betrayal too fresh, too deep. I've been feeding them information for 3 years, Marcel continued, including patrol routes that led to the ambush in the east. Traoré drew his pistol now, aiming it at Marcel's chest. His hand was shaking with rage. Give me one reason why I shouldn't shoot you where you stand, he growled. Because I'm telling you this now. Because tonight, they asked me to plant this in your office. Marcel slowly reached into his jacket and removed the listening device. And because I can help you catch them all. For a long moment, Traoré said nothing, the pistol still aimed at Marcel's heart. Then finally, why now? Why betray them after all this time? Marcel looked directly into Traoré's eyes. Because somewhere along the way, I started believing in what you're doing. In true independence. In a Burkina Faso free from foreign control. 12 soldiers died, Traoré said, his voice breaking. I know, Marcel replied, the guilt crushing him. Their blood is on my hands. I can never wash that away, but I can stop more bloodshed. Traoré lowered the pistol slightly. How do I know this isn't another trick? You don't, Marcel admitted, but they want to stop tomorrow's announcement with China. They're planning something. I don't know what exactly, but it's bigger than intelligence gathering now. Traoré's silent for a long moment, weighing Marcel's words, searching his face for any sign of deception. Who else is involved? He finally asked. Who else has betrayed us? I don't know everyone, Marcel said, but there's a network. Officials in the mining ministry. Someone in your commutations team. They report to French handlers, just like I did. Traoré holstered his pistol, his decision made. If you're telling the truth, you've just signed your death warrant with the French. Marcel nodded. I know, and if you're lying to me now, playing some deeper game, I will kill you myself. Traoré eyed it coldly. I understand. Traoré paced the garden path, thinking rapidly. We have hours until the announcement. If what you say is true, we need to move quickly. We should assume they have backup plans, Marcel warned. Other assets they can activate if I fail. Then we'll use that, Traoré decided. You'll go back to them, tell them you planted the device. Let them think you're still their man. A double agent, Marcel said. Exactly, Traoré confirmed. But understand this, if you betray me again, there will be nowhere in this world you can hide from my vengeance. Marcel nodded, accepting the terms. For the first time in 3 years, despite the danger ahead, he felt something like peace. The weight of deception was finally lifting. One more thing, Traoré said, his voice still tight with controlled anger. From now on, never call me brother again. That right was lost, the moment you chose to spy for France. The words cut deep, but Marcel accepted them as just punishment for his crimes. Together they walked back toward the palace, no longer brothers, but reluctant allies against a common enemy. Dawn broke over Ouagadougou, as Marcel made contact with his French handlers from a secure location. Presidential security officers, hidden out of sight but monitoring every word, surrounded the building. The device is planted, Marcel reported. Exact specifications, northwest corner of the presidential desk, under the drawer. Of course there was no device in Traoré's office. Instead they had planted a fake, one that would appear to function but actually feed false information to whoever monitored it. Excellent, replied the French controller. Remain close to the president throughout the day. We may need you to take additional actions as the situation develops. What kind of actions? Marcel pressed, trying to extract more information about their plans. Stay available and wait for instructions, came the terse reply before the connection ended. Marcel looked at the presidential security officers. They're planning something for today's announcement, but they won't tell me what. We've increased security, the lead officer said. The president is changing the venue for the signing ceremony from the public square to the Interior Ministry building. Easier to control access. Marcel nodded. Smart. But these people are professionals. They'll adapt. For the next few hours, Marcel worked with Traoré's security team, identifying potential vulnerabilities and likely French assets within the government. Several officials were quietly detained for questioning, including 2 from the mining ministry, who quickly confessed to passing information to French business interests. At midday, Marcel was summoned to Traoré's temporary office in the Interior Ministry. The president looked tired but determined. Your information has proven accurate so far, Traoré acknowledged. We've identified several leaks. There will be more, Marcel warned. No doubt, Traoré agreed. No, tell me, if you were still working for them, how would you disrupt today's signing ceremony? Marcel considered carefully. They'd want to avoid assassination too obvious, too much international backlash, more likely economic pressure or blackmail. As if on cue, Traoré's phone rang. The mining minister's voice was panicked. Marcel, President, the Chinese delegation is pulling out. They say they've received documents showing our uranium reserves are depleted, that we've been lying about the survey data. Traoré's eyes met Marcel's. Forged documents, he said after ending the call. This is their play. Classic intelligence operation. Marcel confirmed. So don't disrupt the deal without showing their hand. Traoré called the Chinese ambassador, asking for an urgent meeting. We need to prove those documents are forgeries, he told Marcel. Can you help with that? Yes, Marcel said confidently. I know how they operate, what templates they use for forgeries. I can identify the flaws. For the next 2 hours, Marcel worked with Burkina intelligence officers, examining the forged mining surveys that had been sent to the Chinese delegation. He pointed out subtle inconsistencies, digital manipulation markers, metadata, that proved the documents were recently created. Meanwhile, Traoré met personally with the Chinese delegation, assuring them of Burkina Faso's commitment to honest partnership. By late afternoon, the crisis appeared to be contained. The Chinese delegates, convinced the documents were forgeries, agreed to proceed with the signing ceremony, albeit with additional verification clauses in the contract. Marcel's satellite phone buzzed with an incoming message. Operation compromised. Multiple assets arrested. Proceed to extraction point immediately. His French handlers were pulling out, abandoning their network, as the Burkina authorities closed in. Marcel showed the message to the security team. They're running, he said, which means they might take desperate measures now. Sankara, who had been skeptical of Marcel's sudden change of allegiance, nodded grimly. Or they already have something in motion that we haven't detected. The signing ceremony was scheduled for 6 p.m. As final security sweeps were conducted, Marcel noticed something odd. One of the presidential guards, a man he recognized but couldn't immediately place, was adjusting equipment near the podium where Traoré would stand. Who is that? Marcel asked Sankara, pointing discreetly. Sankara squinted. New transfer from the Northern Battalion. Arrived last week. Marcel felt a chill. Check him now. As security officers approached the man, he glanced up, saw them coming, and immediately reached for his weapon. Shots rang out across the ceremony hall. People screamed and dove for cover. The imposter guard fired twice more before being taken down by security forces. One bullet shattered a window. The other hit Marcel in the shoulder, as he pushed Traoré's safety behind a concrete pillar. Are you hit? Marcel gasped, feeling blood spreading across his shirt. No, Traoré said, eyes wide with shock. But you are. Marcel smiled weakly. Consider it the beginning of my atonement. As medical personnel rushed to treat Marcel's wound, security officers reported that the shooter had been killed. Identification found on his body revealed he was not Burkina military at all.
but a French operative with extensive training.